Hello, I am a 23-year-old software engineer working in a non-government company, and I thought it would be fun and potentially helpful if I talked about my budget and how I budget all of my expenses and everything. I'm also on the fire path, or at least trying to be, which basically means I am hoping to retire very, very early. So I will pull aside the magic notepad window. So this is my actual budget and all of my actual expenses. I earn $107,000 a year, which ends up being a little under $9,000 monthly, and I get around $5,000 after taxes and 401k and health insurance and everything. And then I have a bunch of other information here. I kind of track a lot of stuff. So my total expenses are a little over 3,000, and you can see the details, of course, here, which I'll talk about. I end up saving about 20% of my total paycheck, which ends up being 36% of my take-home pay. And if you include 401k, I'm saving 15% of my 401k, so I'm saving 35% of my total paycheck, including 401k, which is quite a lot. And I try to make this number as big as I can. Throughout a whole year, I spend about $38,000, which means I save about $21,000, or with 401k of almost $38,000. So fire number, this is basically a rough calculation of how much money I'm going to need to retire. You calculate this by just taking your annual spending and multiplying it by 25. I will realistically need more than this, at least 50% more, but this is at least like an absolute lower bound baseline. Anyway, so I guess I'll talk about my expenses. My housing costs, so this is just the total of this column. My rent right now is about $1,400. Realistically, it's double that, but my roommate and I split it, so I pay about $1,400 in rent every month. Utilities, $130, Wi-Fi, trash service, and just other fees they charge us every month. So that ends up being about $1,600-ish a month, which is about 20% of my salary. I also have car expenses. It's fully paid off because I just bought it directly from my dad. So the biggest payment is insurance, followed by gas and the vanity plate because I love my silly vanity plate. Realistically, this gas number is probably higher than reality because my job is very, very close to my apartment. But as with basically everything in this budget, I like to keep a bit of buffer room so that I'm saving at least this much and not necessarily like an estimated this much, you know? Other necessities are things like groceries. I give myself $80 a week. I don't actually spend that much, but I intentionally want to give myself as much grocery spending as possible in an attempt to encourage myself to eat more because I'm not quite underweight, but I could stand to gain a few pounds. I also have things like necessary one-time purchases because I don't know if I need to buy like deodorant, that doesn't really fit anywhere else, and I want to budget for that kind of thing. Medical related expenses, things like medication or I don't know any other doctor related things, copays, and then I have some set aside for public transit. I hope to use public transit more in the future, but my living situation right now doesn't facilitate a ton of it. So then it comes to luxuries. There's really two categories: eating out, which is its own category, and everything else. I used to have a third category, which was clothing, but I don't really buy that much clothing, so I just bundled that recently into everything else. So this is basically anything I buy that is a want. It could be, I don't know, decorations. It could be video games or other trinkets, hobby items, books, gifts, everything like that. And so I have a lot budgeted for that because I really like buying silly little trinkets. I usually don't actually spend $650 a month on luxuries. Like in July last month, I had like $400 left over in this budget. So subscriptions is, it looks like there's a lot of stuff here, but I don't actually spend that much on subscriptions. You could see a lot of this stuff is like a couple dollars a month, because these are annual subscriptions. Like Nintendo Switch Online is $20 a year, so that's basically negligible. The biggest ones are italki lessons, which basically means I hire a tutor to talk with me in Spanish once a week so that I can practice my Spanish, and Audible because I love audiobooks. Actually, this should be one up because it's supposed to be ordered by price. Until a few days ago, I did have climbing membership at the top here for like over $100 a month. But because I'm not climbing as much anymore, I decided to switch that to just do day passes when I decide to go climbing and throw that under luxury budget. Let's see what else. I already went over that. So, Windfall Fund. This is basically the way this works for me personally is when I earn money or get money in any way that isn't through my regular paycheck, I take 50% of that amount and I add it to what I call the windfall fund. And then I just let the other 50% roll into savings. Realistically, it actually does all roll into savings. It's not like I have an actual separate account for this windfall money, but I treat this as money that I can spend freely on things that wouldn't normally go under my luxury budgets. So things that made it go up is I got a YouTube payment of about $100, so I put half of that into my windfall. I spent about $200 on Digital Circus merch, or no, $100. I completely misread that. And so I didn't want to put that under my regular monthly expenses, so I took it out of my windfall fund. I earned $20 playing poker with some friends, so I added $10, as I said, 50% of that, to windfall. The other thing I do is that if I have leftover luxury budget at the end of the month, I do the same thing. I take 50% of that amount and I increase my windfall fund by that amount. So effectively, anytime I have leftover luxury budget at the end of a month, half of that money that I saved, I can spend whenever I want, and the other half just goes into savings. So as I mentioned, July, I had like 400 left over, so I increased my windfall fund by 200. And then I lost like 20 something dollars playing poker, so I decreased that. But this is, as I said, for anything that doesn't normally fall under the luxury budget. So let's say when I bought my Nintendo Switch 2, that came out of this fund. Anytime I lose money playing poker with my friends, I take it out of the windfall fund. Or like any other big purchases, stuff like that. And then finally, this little thing is kind of just an extra little bit of info because I love information. So what this is for is basically I can see if my budget were, or if my salary were X, how much would I save? And so this is basically saying if my salary, instead of being 107K, were 115K, then I would be saving 22.7% of my paycheck, or if you include my 401k, 37%. And then my estimated take home per month would be 5.3K. So let's say if my salary were, I don't know, 500,000, then based on all of my expenses, I would be saving 48% of my paycheck. Is that right? That might be right. Maybe I should double check that later. Or if you include 401k, I would be saving 63%. And so this is just when I like to think about like potential raises in the future, what that will do for my budget. And by the way, I should mention this is like me doing this video is 100% not an attempt to flex or anything. I just have become a little hyperfixated on budgeting. As I've had to do it more, it's become more fun for me to think about this stuff, to think about finances. And I also I've spent so much time thinking about this and fine-tuning my budget that I really hope that it can be helpful for other people. So anyways, this is my setup for my monthly spending. Whatever I put here, let's say I don't know, February 2026, it will automatically populate these other fields. So the month is 100% over, so it says that. Actually, let me just do August, so this actually makes sense. So it automatically calculates that the month is 74% over. And then all of these values are just taken from the main budget tab. The only really interesting thing here is the allotted amount remaining. So what this is it basically tracks how much I would be allowed to spend by this time of the month if I were restricting myself in that way, if that makes any sense. Like, okay, my optional budget slash luxury budget for every month is $650. So on the first of the month, the allotted amount remaining would be 1 day's worth of that, which is $21 a day. So then on the second day of the month, the allotted amount would increase to double that, and so on. The other way of thinking about this is how on track am I to be within my budget? So let's say the month is 74% over. If I have used exactly 74% of the budget, then the allotted amount remaining would be exactly 0. And that would mean that I'm exactly on track to hit this number. And so if this number is positive, that means I'm doing better. That means I'm on track to be below budget, which is good. And if it's negative, that means I am on track to be over budget. And I just like it when this number goes up because in my mind, it feels like earning money or like I'm giving money to my future self. Like if I go the first 5 days of the month without spending any money, then this number would say 100, which basically means that I am on track to save an extra $100, which makes me happy. So let's say by the end of the month, I eat out a lot more than I anticipated. So let's say, I don't know, I spent $200 eating out and $0 on other luxuries. You can see that I am over budget specifically for eating out, and I guess they're under budget for everything else. What this cell is for is balancing the budget. So I can say, for this month, I'm going to transfer $50 from eating out to hobbies, and it will adjust the respective budgets for these so that I am on budget for each. So I set that to what? Oh, is this backwards? Something like that. Okay, I think this is backwards. So basically doing this, I decreased my eating out budget by 120 and increased, or no, other way around. I decreased my hobbies budget by $120 and increased my eating out budget by 120. This is balancing the budget. And honestly, I don't actually ever do this as long as I keep my budget in check. So like as long as the sum of these two tables is less than the total budget for the month, I don't actually care about balancing the budget. This is more useful for seeing over time where your money actually goes. So if you're constantly switching money from your hobbies budget to eating out, then maybe you should just edit your overall budget a little bit. But that's not something that's actually important to me. I just like to have the option. So lastly, I am going to show you what an actual month for me would look like, because I write down everything that I buy that I classify as luxury. So like if I buy groceries, I don't write down how much I spend. So this is not an actual, like these are not actual purchases, but this is what it would look like. I just don't want to like, show everything that I actually buy. So let's say for a month I bought a bunch of audiobooks. Maybe I went river tubing with some friends, bought Pikmin 2. This one is real. and some other things like that. Just things that absolutely fall under wants. Maybe you could argue that public parking and Uber are not a want, but I put them under here regardless. And then every time I ate out for the month. So you can see I'm under budget for each of these, and the total amount I have spent in this month so far 61%, and because that's less than 74% of the month that's over, my allotted amount remaining would be more than that. So I theoretically have $100 extra, and I'm on track to be $100 below budget for the month. And so let's say I spend something, maybe I buy another Switch 2 game, maybe I buy Mario Kart for $80, and I'll write down the date, 24th as the time I'm recording. And that just, adjusts everything, and the allotted amount is now a sad only $26. My optional budget remaining for the month has gone down, and my amount used for the month has gone up. I've had this whole budget set up for the past year, since August 2025, and I have been very, very good about writing down every time I buy something. And this really helps me make sure that I know what I'm spending money on, I know how much I'm spending, and I make sure that I don't spend more than I want to. This allotted amount remaining also makes it a sort of game to me. I see how big I can get this number by the end of the month. And whatever this number is at the end of the month, I will take half of that and add it to my windfall fund. And the other half will just go into savings. And so I am incentivized to not spend money. But I also try not be guilty about spending money. Like I'm a software engineer. I can afford to buy myself fun things and they make me happy, so I should do that. But again, I also am trying to retire as early as reasonably possible, hopefully in like my mid 40s at the latest. And then after that, I'm gonna I don't know, work part-time in an animal shelter or something. I haven't decided. But I really, really like saving money and quantifying exactly how much I am saving. And so I've become very fixated on budgeting and making this budget very, very detailed. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of this spreadsheet, take out all of my information, and put it in the comments, or rather in the description of this video. So if y'all want, you can copy it and start using the spreadsheet yourself if you want, or don't. It's your life. I'm not your mom. Anyways, that's about all. My voice is getting tired and I've no more things to say, so I'm going to end this. If you have any questions about how I budget or about how I manage my finances, feel free to leave questions in the comments, and I will answer them. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in your streams.